Are you a web developer creating dynamic websites using JavaScript as a programming language but gone through a nightmare of boilerplate code? What it means? Writing repetitive lines of codes which are common across the application. Maintenance. What does it mean? JavaScript is unstructured. Hence, it is really difficult to maintain an unstructured application. Change. We all know that change is constant. Clients come up with many of the requirements in the future. Any unstructured application is really difficult to implement changes. Compatibility. One of the most important concerns for any web developer, whether it's device compatibility issues or browser compatibility issues. Focus. As a developer, why do I have to worry on all these aspects? I should be able to focus on the business logic and create websites as soon as possible, providing all the business implementations, right? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then this course on Angular is just right for you. This is Shalini Mittal, and in this video, we are going to create a simple project using Angular. What is Angular? Angular is a framework that is used to create a structured dynamic web application resolving all the issues that we discussed and lets a developer focus on the business logic. Did you hear the term framework? What is it? To explain you about framework, everyone I am sure must be using MS Office. When you click on Microsoft Word, you have the screen where you can select a template. Say for example, I am interested in writing a journal. I click on this, and the moment I do this, can you see it gives me a basic template. Advantage of this is when I get this template, I am able to just modify the content and rest template I have it as it is. Isn't it amazing? That's what framework provides you with. They provide you with a basic template, implementing the best practices and the design patterns that any developer should follow for creating a structured application. Angular is built on basic two concepts. First, that is SPA, single page application. Now, what do you mean by that? It isn't that you are just going to have one page where all the HTML code resides for everything, for every functionality that you want to provide, and you'll just have one class or one file. No. Single page application means, say for example, you go to Chrome, open the Gmail application. Can you see the moment I click here, say sent, the moment I click here on the categories, you would notice only this middle page gets refreshed and all the other pages, like for example the sidebar, the menu bar, they all remain same. Only a part of page is refreshed. This is what is single page application. Means in one application, based on where a user clicked, for that click, whatever content needs to be displayed, of course it's displayed only on one part of a page and only that part is refreshed. The next important concept is dependency injection. Let's understand this with a layman example. Suppose you are going for trekking. Now you are going for trekking in a snow area, but you reside in an area where it doesn't snow at all. Will you end up purchasing snowshoes which are not going to use it? No, right? You go for trekking, you rent the snowshoes, use it, return back, and you come back. Advantage? You don't have to invest money in snowshoes which you are not going to use. At the same time, you don't have to carry the burden of these snowshoes on your backpack to go for trekking. Same applies in the Angular applications. How? Say for example, I have a class traveler. I am a 10 to 12-year-old child and my family likes to travel a lot. So class traveler. Now as a family we travel in a car. Definitely I'll have a car object. C1 is new car. We travel, fine. Now I'm an 18 to 20-year-old child. I have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. It depends, right? Now car, no. I need a bike. I will be traveling on a bike. So as a traveler, now my dependency is on a bike object. So I'll say B1 equals to new bike. you saw what happened. You have to go to the traveler class, you have to change the code, and now instead of car object, you have to create a bike object. Means your traveler is tightly dependent on the vehicle type. This is not desirable. If I change a vehicle, should not change the traveler class. How do you do this? Yes, dependency injection. So I'll create a class vehicle. I'll have car, bus, flight, train, bike, whatever mode of vehicle I want to use as a subclass of class vehicle. The traveler class will have a reference to the class vehicle in the constructor. And then at runtime, traveler says, hey, give me a car object. Because car is a type of vehicle, a car object can be passed. I say tomorrow I want a bike. Because bike is a type of vehicle, I can pass the bike object. Tomorrow I change the type of vehicle, my traveler class remains intact, and I just have to create new classes and make it a subtype of vehicle. This is how Angular implements dependency injection. Before we actually start learning Angular, let us understand the prerequisites required and get ourselves equipped with the same. So the prerequisites required are HTML, CSS and JavaScript. If in case anyone is not aware about these three languages, please go ahead on w3schools.com and get yourselves aware. You don't have to know these three languages professionally, but at least a basic idea that HTML is used to create web pages, CSS is used to style the web page, and JavaScript is used to add dynamism on the web page. At the same time, it is good if you know XML, JSON, HTTP verbs and REST services. But do not worry if you are not aware about any of these four.
Let us see the list of softwares required for learning Angular and TypeScript. Install these softwares and keep our machines ready. For Angular and TypeScript, the first software that we require is Node.js. So go on to the Google, type in Node.js download. The first link, that is the official website, click and you will get the Node.js download options for different operating systems. Based on your operating system, go ahead and download the respective Node.js. Once the Node.js is installed, you can check whether it's installed properly or not by opening the terminal and typing in node-v. If you get the Node version displayed, that means your Node is properly installed. Next, we will require the TypeScript to be installed. To do that, go on your terminal or the command prompt and fire the command npm install -g and TypeScript. Once you do this, you can press enter. It takes some time. Please wait, have patience. And once it is done, it displays, in my case, updated. In your case, it will be something different like installed successfully. To check whether TypeScript was installed successfully or not, you can type in tsc TypeScript compiler -v. If it displays the version, that means your TypeScript is properly installed. Now to install Angular CLI, we will be typing in npm install -g @Angular CLI. CLI is nothing but command line interface. So Angular official website provides you with this Angular CLI to be downloaded and installed, and then it just gives you an interface to create projects and various commands required for the Angular project. So you can press the enter key. It takes some time to download as well. So we'll just forward this installation. Once it's done, because I already had, it just says updated one package. In your case, there will be a list of softwares it downloads and installs, and it takes usually around 2 to 5 minutes, sometimes even, to download and install the CLI. So please wait and have patience. Next, to check whether Angular is installed properly, you can just type in ngv, and if you get the output Angular CLI version, that means your Angular is installed properly. Lastly, we will be requiring the editor where we will write our codes. The editor that we have selected is Visual Studio Code. Open the Google search engine again and type in Visual Studio Code download. You will get the first link, that is the official website. You open this link, again download the Visual Studio Code for your operating system. Once downloaded and installed, if you open the Visual Studio Code, you should see something like this, that is a welcome screen. So if you see a welcome screen, that means your VS Code is installed properly.
To create an Angular project, use the command ng new and give the name to the project. I am giving Angular demo. Once you do this, it asks, do you want to add Angular routing? We are going to say yes, because routing is the way that you implement SPA in Angular. Remember SPA, single page application. When we hit enter, it asks me for the style type. If you know about preprocessors, you can select any one of these, or you can just keep the default CSS as it is. It takes some time to create and download all the artifacts. We'll just speed up this downloading. Once the download is complete, you get all of these that gets printed. It creates all the folder structure, and your project is now created under desktop with the project name as Angular demo. Open Visual Studio Code, go to File, Open, go to the folder where you created the project. In my case, it's desktop and Angular demo. I'll select this, open. Once you do this, you get the project in your workspace. Let us first understand the folder structure. Package.json is one of the most important files where you provide the commands that you want to use. Secondly, the dependencies that Angular uses. All these dependencies are downloaded in the node modules folder. You also have development dependencies like testing libraries, which are not carried forward in the production environment. The next important file is angular.json. This JSON file basically provides all the configurations that Angular requires to compile and execute your Angular project. It specifies the projects, the project type, the source root, that is you can see it's src, prefix app. This we will come back to later. What do you mean by prefix app? You have the output path, that is where the output directory is, the root entry file. So these two files are very important, that is the index.html file and main.ts. You can see this is the name of the main entry point file, and this is for the application's HTML index file. We have a TS config. Angular uses TypeScript as a programming language to create Angular projects. It needs configuration information with respect to TS, that is TypeScript, which is inside the tsconfig.app.json. You can have assets like images, videos, audios in the assets folder. You can provide styles. You can have your own customized styles. Angular does provides with a global styles.css. So if you open the src folder, you already have a styles.css, and whatever styles you apply in this file applies globally. We also can have our third-party JavaScript libraries and provide the path for the same over here. We saw in package.json we had a command that is ngserve. Let's see what happens when we fire this command. Here, right-click, open in terminal, and you can just execute the command ngserve. This command basically starts your Angular application and compiles all the TypeScript files, and then your project is running on a live server, that is localhost 4200. So let's see what is there on the HTTP localhost 4200. So let me just copy this and let's open the Chrome browser. When I type in here localhost 4200, you will see it displays this HTML page. Hold on. Did we create this HTML page? No. That means the moment we use Angular CLI, this page is already created for you. Don't worry, we will be going through where this HTML page is created and how Angular is able to display this page. you would see the ngserve commands basically executes the application and it is up and running on localhost 4200. In angular.json, now we have two important files to look over. Index.html, again src folder, index.html, and here you would see it's a plain HTML file. Just one thing that is different is app root. Remember in angular.json we saw prefix, that is app. So by default, whenever an Angular creates a HTML tag, that HTML tag has a prefix of app. Next important file is main.ts. This main.ts basically provides you with platform browser dynamic. So Angular handles all the browser and device compatibility issues. So it handles because of this module. You also specify the bootstrap module of your application, and that is app module. Module in Angular is nothing but a file. So if you know JavaScript, in JavaScript we do create .js files, and every .js file is called as a module. It's just about that. So here also we specify the bootstrap module. This app module is a special module inside the app and app.module.ts. All the files in Angular you save with the extension .ts because it's a TypeScript file. So you can consider this as a configuration file for your Angular project. So you create n number of modules, you have to configure them in this file so that Angular knows about them, where to look for them, and then Angular takes the responsibility of instantiating them, initializing it, and then displaying the HTML view. Here we already have the two predefined modules, browser and the ng module, which provides you with the core functionalities. The app routing module, because we selected routing as yes, we have routes in the app routing.module.ts. Here you can create your routes, so it's empty as of now because we haven't specified any routes or the path over here. We have router module.forRoute, that is, we tell the router module that hey, go ahead and you are going to create routes for everything defined inside this routes array. Again, you have one more important file over here, that is bootstrap app component. You will hear this term component a lot in Angular. Component modules are few of the building blocks in Angular. So remember, in modules you basically configure all the Angular application level stuff. Component is nothing in Angular, but it's a normal class. So if I open app.component.ts, you will see it's a normal class, app component. It has a property, that's an instance variable that we say, and components are basically nothing but they provide the binding of data with the view. So components are responsible for generating the view. So from where it generates the view, you can see we have the template URL. So template URL, you specify the view that this component is responsible to generate and the data to be tied up with this view. So if you see Angular demo, can you see Angular demo here? So if I go and change this to welcome to training and I save it, see it recompiles. So we have a hot server, and now can you see this change, welcome to training. So how this data is getting binded to the HTML view? Let's explore this HTML page. So app.component.html, can you see all the styles and the full HTML page that is being generated? This is from where the HTML page gets generated. And if you remember in index.html, we had app root, and this app root, so how does index.html knows that for this particular tag what content to display? Because we have specified in main.ts the bootstrap module app module, and in the app module the bootstrap component app component, it goes to the app component, looks up for the selector, looks up for the HTML content to be displayed for this selector. You can have any style specific to this HTML page, and it also binds this data with this HTML page. So ideally, I can just go ahead and I can delete everything, and if I save, see, it's a blank page. If I add a heading now and I say I want to bind that data. So remember in app.component.ts, we have here an attribute that is title. I want to display this content, but this is a variable. So if I just write title over here, it will just display title but not the value for the title. We want Angular to look up for this title as a variable, go in the components class, check for the value and execute this as a variable and put that string expression. So we use curly braces. Can you see now? We got welcome to training. If I go to styles.css, remember the global styles? If I say here body and suppose I use the background color, and if I give a background color, I save it, it applies globally. This syntax in Angular is called as string interpolation, and this syntax is used for data binding, and hence it is called as one-way data binding. There is another syntax of data binding, that is we can use square brackets. So for example, here in src folder we have a assets folder. I've just pasted an image. Let's see how we can refer to this image. So I will be creating here one more property, card is equals to ... because it's outside the app folder. The name of the folder is assets/mastercard.png. Now I will be creating an image tag which basically refers to the card attribute here. So again I can have a h1 tag and I can say img. Using the square brackets, I can bind the data and just provide the name of the property. If you would see, we get the image. You can use the curly braces, that is string interpolation, or the square brackets for implementing one-way data binding in Angular. Let's just create a button and I will be saying button and that's it. Suppose click here. Okay, the moment I do this, a button is created. No issues about that. Now let me go ahead and disable this button. So disabled is HTML attribute which you apply, the button gets disabled. You can see over here. Let's just apply some styles to the button. Just applied some styles and we have this button. It's disabled. Now I want to be able to dynamically apply the value for disabled. If a value is true, the button is disabled. If the value is false, the button is enabled. So let me go ahead and create one more variable choice and I initialize it to true. I want to associate this disabled with this attribute. I can actually use the curly braces syntax and I can say choice. I can, let's say, create here a h3 tag, and the way we did with curly braces, I can also do this. So I can say the inner HTML attribute will be equal to choice. So either you can use square brackets or you can use curly braces and you can see the value is displayed. It's true, fine, it's disabled. Let me change this value to false and if I execute, you can see the value is false but the button is still disabled. So this is the difference in the curly braces and the square bracket syntax. Curly braces evaluates everything to a string. Now this particular choice variable is of type boolean. So I wanted to retain that data type of the variable boolean, hence curly braces will not work and we will have to use square brackets. So then wrap this HTML attribute in the square brackets and now it's false. You can see the button should be enabled. The moment I change this to true, I save it, recompile, this is true, you can see the button is disabled. For event binding, you use the round bracket syntax and you have the event click and I'll say on the click call a function, say show. Again, the syntax remains the same as in any JavaScript code. So I have a show function and I can say over here, suppose alert and button clicked. You save it, execute. Okay, it's true, so it's disabled. So let's make this as false. When you click, the alert is displayed. So this is how you can do event binding. So the round bracket syntax is used for event binding, square brackets and the curly braces for data binding. So the data flows from the component to the view, and the event goes from the view to the component to handle the events raised by the users. Now let's delete all of this, and I will be adding the Bootstrap libraries. So I'll go in index.html and we'll be adding the Bootstrap CDN links. So just go to index.html and copy paste the Bootstrap related CDN link. So you want to use Bootstrap library in your Angular? Yes, you can do that as well. So suppose I say here div Jumbotron. This is again a Bootstrap class, and I can say blog hub, that's the name of my website. You can see we have the blog hub. So we have this Jumbotron. You want to decorate this Jumbotron, you can, and go to styles and apply styles to it. So you can see it's brown and you have a color on it. Let's go ahead and change this. So we'll put this in the H1, and I'll use one more CSS Bootstrap class, that is center. So this is fine. Let's go ahead and add one more component, because in Angular you will be ending up creating many components. To create a component, on the app folder you say right click, open in new terminal, fire the command ng angular generate gc component. The name of the component, so the folder I want is blog list, and I want to add this inside the module, which is this app routing.module.ts. So I'll say app routing.module.ts. The moment I do this, it generates. So you can see inside the app you have a blog list. You have the same structure as for the app, the blog list component html this is the testing file, and the blog component.ts. And if you notice, it also, because we asked it to add it in the app routing.module.ts, if you open, can you see it has configured the component inside the app routing module.ts. Now just go ahead in app.component.html, and here if I just say add, so if you open blog list.component.ts, can you see the selector? So it's all about selectors, that is every component that you create is going to have a selector name, which you can use it as a HTML tag. The moment I do this, I save. If you would see, I don't have it, and if I open the console, app blog list is not a known element. It doesn't knows what is this, because it does not find this app blog list. Now why does it says that is, if you would notice in app.module.ts we have app component, but the blog list component is defined in app routing.module.ts, and we added the blog list selector inside the app component, and app component doesn't recognizes the blog list. So we have to basically export the blog list component so that it is available to the app component.html. Now if you would notice, the error is gone and we got the output blog list works, and if you see, this output is inside the blog list.component.html. Let's modify this for the list of blogs. So I will be having list of blogs. Okay, so then we have this list of blogs in the center. We have to create many blogs. So let's open the blog list.component.ts, and here we will be creating few blog objects and we will display on the list, and then we will be learning that how basically Angular displays that list of blogs that we create in the component in the HTML page. For creating that, I will be creating few files. So again, you go inside the app folder, create a new folder with the name as model, and inside this create a new file with the name as bloghub.ts. Create a class Inside this class, we'll add few properties for the class blog. So we just have ID, we have title, we have description, and we have category for this class blog. Let's create a list of blogs. So I will be creating again a file with the name as blog list.ts, and we'll be creating few blogs. So we have these 4 blog objects, and we import blog from the blog hub module, and we create the 4 objects. So let's go ahead and blog list.components. Here we will be creating a property called as blogs, which will be of type blog array in the constructor. So ideally the initialization part is always suggested that you do it in the init. So I'll say this.blogs is equals to, I have to import it from the blogs. So can you see it's a, so I have to import, so I'll select the second one. If you see the first one, it is a property inside over here. I want to go with the second one, and you can see it imports the blogs from the model blog list. Now once this is initialized, I have this blogs property. This blogs property consists of blog objects, and I want to display those blog objects on the HTML page. So for this blog list component, we have the blog list.component.html here, and we want to display the list of blogs. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, for a list of blogs, because we have many items, either you can take a UL tag or you can have various div tags. So suppose I take a div, and inside this we will be having the various blog objects. But how do you basically tell Angular that, hey, I have this blog array over here, and because it's an array, we have to iterate over the array. That means we need to be able to use something like a for loop, iterate over it, get one blog object, and then display the contents of that blog object. To do that, Angular provides you with a directive that is *ng for, and the syntax is, I say let blog of, and the property name is blogs. The moment I do this, I can say div. I want to access the blog object. I can just say blog and curly braces. Now let's see what happens once we do this. Oh, we have an error. So let's see what is it in the console. Okay, it says it cannot bind to ng for. If you get this error, that means there is something that's missing. Now what is that is, when you open app.routing.module.ts, your blog list component is configured over here, and we have to then import one more module, and that is browser module. So if you open app.module.ts, you would see we have the browser module over here. Copy this and just paste it over here. So we need this browser module, which is from the Angular platform browser, and just copy this because this browser module is the one which has the implementations for the ng for, and this browser module is not in this module, but blog list component is declared inside this module. Hence we also have to declare the browser module over here. Now the moment I do this, I save it, and if we see, can you see? Now I am getting the list of objects, but it is just displaying object. I definitely don't want this. I want the properties of the blog, that is title, description, and category. To do that, I can go here and I can say blog.title. So can you see, now I have the titles. Let's remove the h1 from here. Fine. So now we have the list of blogs. Let's decorate this a bit, and also let's go ahead and add the other stuff. So title, description, and category. And I'll be just applying styles to this particular div so that it's decorated. So just added few styles, and now if you go ahead and see, okay, so we have this list of blogs, and CSS is up to you. How do you want to decorate them? So just applied few styles, added this ID as list to the div, and now if you see the output, we just have these 4 blocks with some colors and CSS. So this is how you can basically add a component. You can add the selector in the, so app component is the parent component for the blog list component. Blog list components displays the list of blogs. There is one more directive that you can use. So for example, if there are no items in the blogs, I can say div star ng if. So I'm comparing for the condition if blogs dot length. So we already know the length attribute of the arrays is 0. That means there are no items. I just want to display div. So just add it. If the length is 0, that means there are no blocks. Be the first one to create a blocks. Or if I can say my blogs.list is greater than 0, only then go ahead and display this list of blogs. So right now if you would see, I would get the same output, no difference. Only if I go to blog list.component.html, if I go to blog list.component.ts, and if I say this as an empty array, I just do this. If I save it, now can you see it says be the first one to create a blog. So you can use the if directive to check for the conditions, and if the condition is true, only then go ahead and display the list of blogs. Let's go ahead and modify this. So this is how we can display the list of blogs and use the if and for structural directives to modify the HTML elements dynamically. We can add the selectors in the HTML file. We would need one more component, and that is the form, so that we can let the users add blogs of their choice. Again, for creating the form, we'll be using the same syntax, and I will be saying and just instead of blog list, we will change this to blog form. So it adds up, and let's export this as well. Again, if you go to blogform.component.ts, you have a selector. Remember, this app hyphen is just the default. If you want to change this app hyphen to anything else, suppose I want just to keep it app, just to keep it block form, I can do that as well. And I can go to app component.html, and here let's say I'll add a form. So I'll say this. If you open the block form.component, it just has a content displaying block form works, and if you see, the output remains the same. We do have a form. So let's just add the few HTML stuff inside this, where I will be creating just a form. So just a simple form. I'll add some CSS to it. So you can see we have a form. This category is empty, so we'll be filling in this as well. So we have this form, and we have this let category of categories. So open block form.component.ts and add a categories property, which will be of type array. So we'll have a categories initialized with these values. So we have technical, personal, and nature. Done. So a user will be adding values, the title and the description, and select a category, and we have to take that data. Now to be able to do that, in the block form.component.html, so let's close all of these, it's confusing. So we'll have block form and the TS file. Okay, now here I want to be able to fetch the values. So in Angular, it provides you with a special variable which you can associate to. So I can say hash block form is equals to ng form. The moment you do this, you associate, and if you would notice, there is an error, and the error, it says this: there is no directive ng form. For a form to be able to access data of these form elements, you have to inject the special directive ng form, and for Angular to be able to process that, in app routing.module Angular.ts, just say import Angular forms, and here you have a forms module, and just you have to provide in the imports as well. So in the imports goes all the Angular specific modules, declaration goes all the components, and exports is whatever you want to export to the main module, that is app.module.ts. Now once you do this, you can see I'm able to access the form. If I go ahead and here just display say div, and I use block form because that's the variable name I've created, and I can say block form dot value, the form value, block form dot value. Just go ahead and let's see what it displays. So we have form value, and you can see it's object. Now this is something which you don't want. We want the form. This block form basically should be able to display the values in the title, description and category that we select or we type in. To do that, I will have to add a pipe. The pipes in Angular are nothing but they are just used for formatting the data for the presentation. So for example, here I say JSON. If you go to blog list.component.html, you want the category to be printed in say caps. You can say pipe, and you can use a pipe called as uppercase. And let me move this category before the title. Now if you see the category uppercase, and if you see the output, you will see all the categories are in capital, and here now I have an empty JSON object. For Angular to access these form elements, you have to add a special directive to every form element, and that is ng model. So here I will be adding ng model. Same I will be adding over here for the type description, and same we will add it for the drop down. Now can you see title, description and category, and of course they are empty. The moment I start typing, see the block form gets updated. Right? I can click on the create button. We have seen how to handle the event binding. So let's go ahead, write the event binding for the button and get this data and pass this data to the list of blogs so that it gets updated over here. So in my blog form.component.html, when I click on this submit button, it's a type of submit. The form on submit event gets fired. So let's handle the submit event, and I'll say insert, and I'll pass in this blog form dot value. Let's create in the blog form.component.ts. Let's have this insert function. Something will have a variable that is able to access the data passed in when I click on the blog submit form. And if I just say alert and blog, let's see if I'm able to get the data in the blog form component.ts, and once I'm able to do it, next we will see how we can update the blog list which is in the blog list component.html. I type in Angular web framework. I select a category. I click on create. An object is passed. So it displays this way. We can actually access the values. So I can go in blog form.component.ts, and suppose here I say blog.title. If you would notice, I again enter Angular and I say web framework. I click on a category and I say create. Can you see we got the title? Now just that because we have got this blog object, we should be able to pass this blog object to the list of blogs. Now to pass the data, we have one more important building block in Angular, and that is services. So let's go ahead and create a service as well. So inside the app folder, I create a new folder called as service. In this service folder, I'll open in terminal and I'll say ngg. I want to create a service. I say s, and I will be having a blog service. So maybe I'll just say blog. So you can see it created a blog service.ts. So inside the service, I have this blog service.ts. You can see one more thing to notice, that Angular provides you with various decorators. So whenever you have @ symbol, they are called as decorators. So we had a decorator in app.module with an ng module, which basically decorates this class with more attributes to pass in. Same way for every component, you would see a decorator at component. This decorator basically modifies the behavior of this class and tells Angular that this is a special class which is going to act as a component with a special functionality, that it is going to represent the HTML page and bind the data with the view. Same way, the moment we have service, it has a decorator at injectable, so Angular knows that this particular class is a kind of service which can be used by any components in the project. And because it can be used by components in the project, it uses dependency injection. Remember, we discussed dependency injection. So any component has a dependency on this class, it has to be injected, hence the name at injectable. So here I will be creating a blocks array, and which I will say to be of type blog array. I want to initialize this. I will initialize this from the blocks, importing it from the model blog list. So now we are moving. So now what we are doing is, instead of the component directly accessing the blog list, now my service accesses this blogs list. And whenever my form creates a blog, I'm going to update this list. So I'll say add blog. I'm going to get a blog object from the form. So from form is going to call this add blog, and I'll say this dot blogs dot suppose unshift. Unshift is again a JavaScript method. It's with respect to JavaScript arrays. So you can check on W3 schools if you don't know about what is unshift. And I'm going to add this blog. Let's just print after I add what it prints. Okay. Now my blog form.component will go ahead and modify this, and here now this form has a dependency on the service because it has to call the add blog method of the service. Now the way you inject the service is in the constructor. So I'll say service which is of type blog service. The moment you do this, it auto imports it for you, and then here I can say this dot service dot add blog, passing in the blog object. I'll remove this alert now from here, and I can just add a console.log saying inserting. That's it. Now if we go ahead, I have this. Let me open the console. I add Angular. I'll say web framework. I select a category. I say create. Can you see inserting? And in blog service now, instead of 4, I have 5 objects. Okay, I want to add the ID. So in the blog service.ts, let me do this. So I'll say ID is private, so I cannot access. So I'll just modify that. Here in blog hub.ts, I'll make this public so the service can access. That's it. Now the moment I do this, again you would see, suppose I say Angular. I select a category, I click on create, inserting, and now can you see title, category, and it also has an ID, so it gets the length and it adds an ID for the same. So I'll have to do in the service ID length plus 1 because the ID should be 5 and not 4. So then let's say I again enter title HTML5 design. I select technical, I create now Okay, so we have the IDS file. So you saw that we have the block, we are able to access it in the form and it is added, and at the same time if you would notice it also gets added in the list of blocks. Can you see we just added HTML5, it is there. Now why this is happening is in my blog service.ts you can see this blocks array is referring to the blocks which is defined in the blog list, and inside this blog list we have this blocks which is also referred by blog list.component.ts. Okay, so the moment anyone changes the blog list, it gets automatically updated to all the other components, and that's perfectly fine because this is what we need, and this is why services are used. So the moment service updates this blogs array, my list component who is referring to the blogs array, because it's a reference, so we have the blogs which is defined in the service. So we have the blogs which is defined in the service, which is basically accessing the blogs which is defined in the blog list.ts. So this service updates this blogs array which is referring to the blogs inside the blog list.ts. It automatically gets updated for the list component as well. But in real-time scenarios, we won't have static data lying in our application. This data will be actually coming in from the database. So your blog list component.ts should actually be referring to the blog list defined in the service. So let's modify this code. Again, this blog list has a dependency on the service. So I'll create a variable which will be of type blog service, and then instead of this I'll say this dot service, and let me create a get blogs method over here. So I'll say get blogs, and this is ideally how you should do it. Return this dot blogs, and in a blog list here then you can say this dot service dot get blogs, and in the blog service please keep this as private. And now if we go, of course everything remains the same. It does get data from the service. I can add new data. So suppose I can say over here Singapore trip, I add, and I'll say amazing experience. I select personal, I click on create, you can see it's added. So this is how basically you create Angular project. You have components, you add various components, you create services which allows you to share data across your components. So this is all fine till here. We are able to create, add bootstrap, create a form, update data and all. Let's add routing. So here you can see everything is on single page, but yes, Angular comes in with single page applications, but also we have to provide routes. So to do that, instead of adding in app.component.html, adding these components directly, I will be creating links. I will be using Bootstrap navigation bar to add the link. So let's add that HTML code. So I've just added the navigation bar of the Bootstrap, added some styles to it. So this I'll leave it to you. How do you want to style your applications? And then we have these two links, create blog and blogs. But then when I click on create blog, how does Angular knows what to display on the click of create blog or what to display on the click of blogs? For that, open the app routing module.ts, and this is the array where we configure our routes. So I am saying if my path is say list, okay, for this path the component responsible to display the data is blog list component, and the same thing we do it for the form. So when I click on create, the component responsible for displaying the data is blog form component. Let's add these routes to the app component HTML. Here I will be saying A. So you add router link is equals to /create, and the same thing you do it for the blogs as well. So router link is equals to list. Now, when I click on create, your Angular needs to know where to display the content for this create blog that is in the blog form.component.html. For that, you will have to add a router outlet. So I will be adding a tag over here saying router outlet. Again, this is an Angular specific tag. Now, the moment I do this, you click on create blog, it displays the form component. You click on blog, it displays the list of blogs. Can you see? It's so beautiful. You can click on create blog, you can add the data. So suppose I say new title, I say new description, I add something, I say personal, I click on create, I say blogs, and can you see it's added over here. So this is how you can create paths, and the moment you create routes, if you would notice, the URL also changes. This is very important when you go with routing, that the URL has to change so that when I refresh this page, I get the same view. With this, we come to an end of this video. Happy learning, take care, and bye-bye.